I never imagined that what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life would become the one that destroyed forever the person I thought I was. Hello everyone, I'm Michael. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, do it now, because today I'm telling you the most shocking story I've ever lived through. 3 years ago. On my wedding day, I discovered something that changed me forever. But what I did after left 200 people speechless and ruined. 2 lives forever. Follow until the end and comment your city. I want to see how far this story reaches. Believe me, the revenge I served that day was sweeter than any wedding. Cake. Savannah, Georgia. A small southern town where everyone knows everyone, where secrets travel as fast as the summer wind, and where wedding traditions are as sacred as Sunday church. And it's right here that everything began. Let me take you back in time. It was May 2021, and I, Michael Thompson, 32 years old, owner of a small chain of restaurants specializing in Southern cuisine, was about to marry who I believed was the woman of my life. Jessica Parker, 28 years old, elementary school teacher with honey blonde, hair and a smile that could light up even the darkest day. We had planned everything down to the smallest detail. Wedding was to take place at Forsyth Park. Methodist Church, one of the most beautiful churches in Savannah, followed by a reception at the mansion on Reynolds Square, one of the most elegant venues in the city. We had invited 250 people, including relatives from all over the South and childhood friends. Jessica seemed like the perfect bride. She had spent months choosing the dress, a French lace masterpiece that cost more than my first car, and had coordinated every single detail, from flowers to wedding favors, from menu to music. She had become almost obsessed with the idea of perfection. My best man was Brandon Hayes, my best friend since we were 12 years old. Brandon was what you'd call the classic Southern dark and handsome type.
6'3", dark hair always.
Perfectly styled, and that roguish smile that drove women crazy. He played football in high school, was the quarterback for the university team, and now ran a construction company that his father had left him as inheritance. Brandon had always been by my side. When my father died in a car accident when I was 18, he was the one who pulled me out of depression. When I opened my first restaurant, he was the one who lent me the initial money without even asking for a contract. When I met Jessica, he was the one who encouraged me to ask her out because, in his words, she was perfect for me. For this reason, choosing the best man had been automatic. There was no one else in the world I trusted more. Jessica and Brandon had known each other almost as long as I had known him. She was friends with Brandon's sister Sarah since middle school. We often hung out all together, me, Jessica, Brandon, and his girlfriend of the moment. He always had a new one every 6 months. It was normal to see them joking together. It was normal for her to tease him about his continuous failed love stories. It was normal for him to call her my best friend's wife, even before I asked her to marry me. What wasn't normal, and what I had never noticed, were the looks they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Jessica had become strangely nervous. Initially, I thought it was normal pre-wedding stress. After all, we were organizing the event of the year in Savannah, and the pressure was enormous. Her mother, Margaret Parker, an old-school Southern woman, had transformed the preparations into a production worthy of Gone with the Wind. Every detail had to be perfect. Every tradition had to be respected. Every guest had to be impressed. But there was something different about Jessica. I often found her lost in thought, with her gaze lost in the void. When I asked her what she was thinking about, she always answered with a forced smile. "Nothing, honey. I'm just thinking about the wedding." 2 weeks before the big day, I noticed she was spending a lot of time on the phone, always in another room. When I asked her who it was, she told me she was coordinating the final details with suppliers. One evening, while she was making one of these mysterious phone calls, I approached the bedroom door. I heard her voice, sweet and whispering, say, "I can't wait anymore. After Saturday, everything will be different." My heart skipped a beat. Who was she calling? What was supposed to be different after Saturday? Saturday was our wedding day. It was supposed to be the beginning of our life together, not the end of something that evening. When I asked her directly about that phone call, she lied, looking me straight in the eyes. It was my cousin from Atlanta, she said. I was explaining to her how to get to the church, but her cousin from Atlanta had apologized 2 months earlier because she couldn't come to the wedding. Brandon, for his part, had become strangely present in our lives. Before, he visited us maybe once a week. It seemed like he was always somewhere around. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for my best friend's wedding, he said with that contagious smile of his. He always offered to help Jessica. With wedding errands? I'm single anyway, and don't have anything better to do, he joked. She always accepted, saying it was very sweet of him to help us one morning. A week before the wedding, I came home earlier than expected from a work meeting. I heard Jessica and Brandon's voices coming from the garden. I approached the kitchen window to greet them, but something in the tone of their voices stopped me. We can't continue like this anymore, Jessica was saying. I know, Brandon replied. But after Saturday, everything will change. What if Michael finds out? He won't find out anything. He's too in love and too trusting. We've waited so long. Can wait a few more days. My blood froze. What were they talking about? What did they have to wait for? And why did Jessica seem so worried that I might discover something? I hid behind the curtain and continued listening, but the conversation took a more innocent turn. They started talking about flowers and decorations. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe they were organizing. A surprise for me, but doubt was planted in my mind like a poisonous seed. Thursday before the wedding, Brandon took me out for the traditional groomsmen evening. We went to River Street Tavern, our favorite place, where we had celebrated every big occasion of our adult lives. Michael, he told me, raising his beer, you found a diamond in Jessica? She's a special woman, really special. I know, I replied, trying to chase away doubts from my mind. I hope you realize how lucky you are, he continued. There was something strange in the way he said it, almost as if he was speaking from personal experience. Brandon, is there something you should tell me? He looked me straight in the eyes with that serious expression he used only on important occasions. Mike, you're my best friend. I love you like a brother. I would never let anyone hurt you. Should have reassured me. Instead, it worried me even more. The night before the wedding, Jessica slept at her mother's house, according to tradition. She called me to wish me good night. Michael, honey, tomorrow will be the most beautiful day of our lives, she told me. Can't wait, I replied, even though part of me was terrified of what the next day might reveal. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, I replied. But as I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was the first time those words didn't sound completely sincere. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6. Even though the ceremony was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon, I couldn't sleep. It was a combination of excitement, nervousness, and that annoying feeling that something wasn't going right. The day was perfect weather-wise. Bright sun, 82 degrees, a light breeze that made the leaves of Savannah's ancient oaks dance. Everything seemed orchestrated by destiny to create the perfect day for a wedding. Brandon arrived at 9 to help me get ready. He brought a bottle of Kentucky bourbon. For the nerves, he said jokingly, but he also seemed strangely nervous. He kept looking at his phone and occasionally smiled mysteriously. Are you expecting some important call? I asked him. No. Just the usual work, he replied. Yeah, but he put the phone away a little too quickly. The ceremony at Forsyth Park Methodist Church was literally perfect. Jessica was radiant in her French lace dress. When I saw her walking toward the altar on her father's arm, my heart stopped. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. For a moment, all the doubts of the previous weeks vanished. Reverend Williams, who had known both of us for years, celebrated a touching ceremony. When it came time to exchange vows, Jessica looked at me with teary eyes. Michael, she said with a trembling voice, I promise to love, honor, and respect you every day of my life. I promise to be faithful in good times and in difficult ones. You are my heart, my soul, my everything. The words were beautiful, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't describe. It was as if she was reciting lines from a script she had memorized. When my turn came, I spoke from the heart. Jessica, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I promised to protect you, support you, and love you unconditionally. There's nothing in the world that could ever make me stop loving you. At that moment, I noticed that Brandon, standing next to me as best man, had a strange expression on his face, almost guilty. "You may kiss the bride," said Reverend Williams. The kiss was perfect. The guests' applause filled the church. Photographers took hundreds of photos. Everything seemed straight out of a dream. But dreams, sometimes, can turn into nightmares without warning. After the ceremony, while the guests headed to the reception at the mansion on Reynolds Square, Jessica told me she had to quickly go home to change and put on the reception dress, a less elaborate but still stunning dress that her mother had ordered from Atlanta. "I'll see you directly at the reception, honey," she said, giving me a quick kiss. "I want to make a memorable entrance. You want me to accompany you?" asked. No, Brandon offered me a ride. "So you can go directly to the reception and make sure everything is in place." Brandon gave me a pat on the shoulder. "See you in an hour, brother. Get ready for the party of your life." I watched them walk away together in Brandon's black BMW. Once again, that annoying premonition gripped my stomach. At the mansion on Reynolds Square, everything was perfect. The decorations were dreamy. White roses and blue hydrangeas everywhere, soft lights creating a magical atmosphere, a string quartet playing in the corner. The guests were arriving, all complimenting the beauty of the ceremony. My mother, Rebecca Thompson, approached me with teary eyes. "I'm so proud of you, my son. Your father would have been so happy today." Jessica's mother, Margaret, also seemed in her element, receiving compliments from all the ladies of Savannah for the impeccable organization. An hour passed, then an hour and a half. Jessica and Brandon still hadn't arrived. "Where are they?" I asked Margaret. "Oh, you know how women are," she replied with a nervous smile. "She's probably fixing every single detail of her makeup. She arrived soon, but when 2 hours passed, I started seriously worrying. I called Jessica. The phone went directly to voicemail. I called Brandon. Same result. "Maybe there was a problem with the car," said my mother, trying to calm me down. The guests started whispering among themselves. I could hear the unasked questions floating in the air. Where was the bride? Why was she taking so long? At 5:30, unable to bear the anxiety anymore, I decided to go to Jessica's house to see what was happening. "I'll be right back," I told my mother. "Tell the guests. We'll start with aperitifs." I drove like crazy through the streets of Savannah. The Saturday afternoon tourist traffic seemed like a personal obstacle, put there by destiny to torment me. When I arrived at Jessica's house, a beautiful Victorian house in the historic district that her parents had given her for graduation, I immediately noticed Brandon's BMW parked in the driveway. Good, I thought. At least they were here. There had probably really been some last-minute problem. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I tried calling Jessica's phone once more. I heard the ringtone coming from inside the house, but no one answered. I used the key Jessica had given me months earlier.
"Jessica? Brandon? Everything okay?" I shouted, entering. The house was silent. Too silent. I went up the stairs toward Jessica's.
What I saw when I fully opened that door will remain etched in my memory forever. Jessica, still wearing her white bridal lingerie, was on the bed with Brandon. They weren't just hugging or kissing. They were making love with a passion I had never seen in Jessica, not even in our most intimate moments. Time stopped. The world stopped. My heart stopped. I don't know how long I stood there paralyzed watching that scene. It could have been seconds or minutes. My brain refused to process what it was seeing. Then Jessica opened her eyes and saw me. Her scream of shock and terror brought Brandon back to reality too. He turned toward me with an expression of pure panic on his face. "Michael." Jessica pulled herself up, desperately trying to cover herself with the sheets. "It's not what it seems. It's not what it seems. The stupidest words you can say when you're caught red-handed with your future husband's best man on your wedding day. It's not what it seems." My voice came out like a growl. My wife and my best friend in bed together on our wedding day isn't what it seems. Brandon got up, looking for his clothes. Mike, listen, I can explain. Explain what? I felt anger, rising inside me like boiling lava. Explain how you betrayed 20 years of friendship. Explain how you've been making fun of me for months. We never wanted to hurt you, said Jessica, starting to cry. Just happened. We couldn't stop it. It just happened, I repeated incredulously. How long has this been going on? The silence that followed was more eloquent than any confession.
How
Long, I shouted. Double quote 6 months, Jessica whispered. 6 months, half of our official engagement. While I was planning our future together, they were planning how to betray me in the most humiliating way possible. On our wedding day, I said, more to myself than to them. Couldn't even wait until it was over. Michael, please, Brandon began. I know it looks terrible. It looks terrible. My anger exploded. It looks terrible. You're my best man. I entrusted you with the rings. I entrusted you with making sure everything went perfect. We. Brandon couldn't find words. Get out, I said in a voice so cold it surprised me. Get out of my sight before I do something I might regret. Michael, please, let's talk about it, Jessica begged. There's nothing to talk about, I replied. The wedding is over. Everything is over. I left the room and the house, leaving them there with their shame and their clothes scattered on the floor. As I drove back to the reception, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, pain, humiliation, betrayal. Everything mixed. In a poisonous cocktail that burned me from the inside. But then, as I crossed Bull Street, a strange calm began to descend on me. Along with the calm came an idea. An idea that at first seemed crazy to me, but the more I thought about it, the more it seemed perfectly right. If they wanted to humiliate me, I would give them the opportunity to be humiliated in front of all of Savannah. When I returned to the mansion on Reynolds Square, it was past 6:30. The guests were becoming decidedly restless. Margaret Parker approached me with a worried expression. Michael, where are Jessica and Brandon? People are starting to ask questions. I looked her straight in the eyes. Mrs. Parker, soon you'll know exactly where they've been. The tone of my voice must have conveyed something, because she visibly paled. Did something happen? Asked my mother, approaching. Yes, Mom, I replied. Something happened. But now, excuse me, I have an announcement to make. I headed toward the small stage where the string quartet was playing. Asked them to stop and took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. I know you're wondering where the bride and my best man are, a murmur crossed the room. 250 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. Before answering this question, I'd like to say something. Today was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. I waited 32 years to find the right woman, and I believed I had found her in Jessica. People started exchanging worried looks. Someone understood that something wasn't going right. I also believed I had chosen the right man as best man. Brandon Hayes has been my best friend for 20 years. I entrusted him with my friendship, my trust, and today I entrusted him with the rings that were supposed to symbolize my marriage. The tension in the room was palpable. My mother was looking at me with an expression of terror, as if she knew what was about to happen. Unfortunately, I just discovered that in the last 6 months, while I was planning this wedding, my fiancé and my best man were planning something else. Gasps of shock began to resonate in the room. I found them in bed together half an hour ago, on what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the whispers began, which became louder voices, which became a real buzz of disbelief and indignation. Margaret Parker seemed about to faint. Jessica's father, Robert, had his face red with anger and humiliation. Now I continued, raising my voice above the buzz. I know many of you came from very far for this wedding. You took time off work, you booked hotels, you bought gifts, and I am sincerely sorry you had to witness this. At that moment, Jessica and Brandon made their entrance. Into the room, they'd obviously heard that I had returned and understood they had to face the situation. Jessica was wearing the reception dress, but she had clearly been put together in a hurry. Brandon had a wrinkled shirt and messy hair. When they saw me on stage with the microphone, they stopped like deer in headlights. Ah, there they are, I said into the microphone, pointing at them. The protagonists of the day, all eyes turned toward them. Jessica started crying. Brandon seemed to want to sink into the earth. "Jessica, Brandon, come on up," I said with exaggerated courtesy. "After all, this is your day as much as mine." They didn't move, or stood there, paralyzed by shame and humiliation. "No, don't you? Want to share with our guests what you shared with me today?" Reverend Williams, who had stayed for the reception, stood up. "Michael, my son, maybe it would be better." "No, Reverend," I interrupted him gently. "These two chose to make their love public on my wedding day. It's right that everyone should know." I turned back to the guests. "You see, Jessica and Brandon have had a relationship for 6 months. They continued to pretend to be dear to me while planning how to betray me in the most humiliating way possible. Not only did they destroy my marriage, but they disrespected each one of you who came here today to celebrate what you thought was true love." A man in the crowd shouted, "What bastards!" A woman added, "How could they?" "Now, I concluded, since there will be no wedding to celebrate today, I invite you all to go home. The food and drinks are already paid for, so if anyone wants to stay to eat something before leaving, you're welcome. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm leaving." Margaret Parker intercepted me. "Michael, please, it can't end like this. We can talk about it. We can solve." "Mrs. Parker," I said with kindness but firmness, "your daughter made her choice, and I made mine." Robert Parker approached Brandon with his face contorted with rage. "You piece of shit," he told him. "How dare you? How dare you dishonor my family like this?" Brandon tried to say something, but Robert continued, "Get out of here. Get out before I call the police." As I left the room, I could hear behind me the chaos that was unleashing. The voices of indignant guests, Jessica's crying, Jessica's father's screams against Brandon. My mother reached me in the parking lot. "Michael, wait." I turned toward her. Only then did I realize I was trembling. "Mom," I said, and suddenly all the anger transformed into pure pain. How could they do this to me? She hugged me tight. "I don't know, son. I don't know. On my wedding day, Mom, they couldn't even wait until it was over." "I know, honey, I know." We stayed there for a few minutes, embraced in the parking lot of the mansion on Reynolds Square, while inside the chaos of my failed wedding continued. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," I replied honestly. "But I know one thing. I will never forgive them." In the weeks that followed, the story of my failed wedding became legend in Savannah. I couldn't go anywhere without people looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Some saw me as a victim, others as a hero for having the courage to publicly expose the traitors. Jessica tried to contact me several times. She sent me letters, emails, messages. She even showed up at my restaurants. But I never spoke to her again. I changed the house locks, blocked her number, instructed all my staff not to let her into the premises. Brandon, for his part, left town. His reputation was so ruined that his business began losing customers. No one wanted to do business with the man who had betrayed his best friend on his wedding day. I heard he moved to Florida to start over. Jessica remained in Savannah, but her life changed drastically. She lost her teaching job. Parents didn't want a woman who had betrayed her husband on their wedding day to educate their children, and she was forced to move back in with her parents. 6 months after the failed wedding, I received a letter from a lawyer. Jessica and Brandon wanted to get married and needed me to sign some documents to officially annul our marriage, which technically had lasted only a few hours since we had never signed the final documents. I read the letter and threw it in the trash. If they wanted to resolve the legal matter, they could do it without me. A year later, I heard they had married in a private ceremony with only parents present. None of the friends we had in common participated. Our reputation was too compromised. 2 years after my failed wedding, my life had taken a completely different direction. I had sold 2 of my restaurants and opened 3 new ones in other Georgia cities. Business was going better than ever. Maybe because I had channeled all my energy into work. I had also started dating again. Not seriously, but enough to remind myself that there was life after Jessica. I had learned to trust again, slowly and cautiously. But I was learning. On the third anniversary of my failed wedding, I received an unexpected call. "Michael, it's Sarah, Brandon's sister." I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. "Hey, Sarah," I replied cautiously. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she said, "but I wanted you to know something. Brandon and Jessica broke up." I remained silent. "The marriage lasted only 18 months, she continued. "It seems she cheated on him with another man." The irony of the situation didn't escape me. And how did he take it? Very badly. He called my mother crying, saying he didn't understand how she could do such a thing to him, that he really loved her, and that she had destroyed everything. Couldn't hold back a bitter laugh? He really didn't understand? That's what I wanted to tell you, Michael. I wanted you to know that they got what they deserved. What they did to you was unforgivable, and in the end, life gave them back the same medicine. "Thank you for telling me, Sarah," I replied. "You know what? I don't care about them anymore." And I realized, as I said those words, that they were true. I felt no satisfaction for their breakup. I felt no anger for their betrayal. I felt nothing. I was finally free. Now 3 years have passed since that terrible day in May. I'm about to turn 35, and my life is completely different from how I'd imagined it at 32. I have 6 restaurants in 3 different states. I've traveled to places I never dreamed of visiting. I've learned to cook dishes I had never tried before. I've built a new circle of friends based on mutual trust and true loyalty. And 2 weeks ago, I met a woman. Her name is Emma. She's a lawyer from Atlanta. She's 33 years old and has a smile that really lights up the darkest day. I haven't told her the whole story of my failed wedding yet, but I will soon, because I learned that secrets are like poison. In the end, they kill everything they touch. The revenge I served that day at the mansion on Reynolds Square was sweet. But it wasn't the most important thing I got from that terrible experience. The most important thing was the lesson. Learn that people can change your life in an instant, for better or worse. I learned that trust is a precious gift that shouldn't be given lightly. I learned that betrayal, however painful, can be the catalyst for a positive transformation. But above all, I learned that true revenge is not humiliating those who hurt. True revenge is living a life so full and happy that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. When I think of Jessica and Brandon now, I no longer feel anger. I feel almost gratitude. Because if they hadn't betrayed me, I would never have discovered what I'm made of. I would never have learned that I can survive the worst that life can throw at me. I would never have built the life I have now, which is 1,000 times better than the one I would have had if that marriage had gone through. Sometimes people ask me if I'll ever forgive them. The answer is no, and not because I hold a grudge. It's because forgiveness implies they still have a place in my life. They simply don't. My life now is full of people who respect me, support me, and truly love me. I have no room for those who have proven they don't deserve my trust. And this, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all, complete indifference. Now I'm curious about you, who have listened to my story until the end. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever experienced a similar betrayal? How did you react? Comment below with your experiences. And meanwhile, I'm leaving here on the final screen to other stories that deeply marked my life, and that will surely surprise you. Thank you for following my story until the end.